Well, a very good morning to you. Welcome to M Live. My name is Zainab Isma. Thank you so much for joining us. Indeed, the second day of the week. Well, we have lots lined up for you in the next 2 hours on the show. And of course, we'll be joined by our panelists this morning to discuss a variety of issues in the country. And we'll be taking a look at some of the stories as well that will be informing the basis of our conversation this morning, as well as what's in the dailies. Let's begin with those stories now. And the government has lifted the ban on genetically modified crops in the country after a 10-year suspension. The landmark decision has been lauded by scientists who say it is a step in the right direction if the country is to achieve food security. Naima Sampao has that story.
How are you?
President William Ruto and the cabinet has today lifted the ban on GMO, which was instituted during President Mwai Kibaki's tenure. The decision, according to a dispatch from the cabinet, was reached in accordance with the recommendation of the task force to review matters relating to genetically modified foods and food safety. The move has been welcomed by scientists in the country who say GMOs are necessary in making a country food secure.
We are really excited today as a scientific community and as a project because of what the president announced today together with the cabinet, the lifting of the ban on the import of GM food imports, and we are really very excited. I think this is the news for the decade. We've been looking forward to this. We've waited for it for 10 years. And I think as a scientist, I hope I'm also talking on behalf of other scientists who have been working on improving the crops against the various challenges that we have in Kenya.
Kenya now joins 30 other countries in the world that have embraced GMO. It is also the 8th country in Africa to do so. 10 years ago, the then Health Minister Beth Mugo banned the import of GMO foods following the publication of a paper that linked GMOs to cancer. Mugo's move was castigated and labeled selfish, and she was accused by the scientific community of taking a decision that had such huge impacts on a country's economy based on personal reasons, since she was battling cancer at the time. Scientists maintain that GMOs are safe and any safety concerns are baseless.
The concerns have revolved around the safety, around environmental conservation and sustainability, and also the socio-economic impacts in terms of ownership of the technology, intellectual property, and also some cultural beliefs about the technology. So these are the main ones, and when you look back at how much has been done on this technology, we are already aware that the technology has been in the market for more than 26 years now. And so those countries that have been able to thoroughly study, consume trillions of meals on biotech crops have all come up with one verdict, that the concerns about safety is not grounded on any scientific evidence. And so GM crops are as safe as traditional and conventional crops.
Over the last couple of years, Kenya has been researching on various genetically modified crops such as banana, maize, cotton and cassava, bred to give the crop resistance to various pests and diseases. Some of the research has been concluded and the scientists are awaiting approval for commercial release. Genetically modified cotton, though, was approved for commercialization in 2019. Now, the research anticipates a major growth in the agriculture sector as farmers begin to embrace BT crops.
We'd like this to be a very short-term measure, importation. We want our farmers to grow the crops, because when you import food, then you are denying our farmers that opportunity to make money. You are growing, you are benefiting other farmers. We do not want that. And because we are ready, Kenya is ready, scientists are ready, the biosafety regulators have assured us that they are ready, then we need to seize this opportunity when the ban has been lifted to grow our foods so that we can feed ourselves and also produce enough for the feeds. And for export, we should be aiming at exporting, not importing. And Kenya has what it takes to export food. And so if you're doing badly on agriculture, from the what we are producing nationally and what we export, then we cannot even build our foreign exchange so that we can become, we can reduce inflation. And so by making agriculture competitive, making agriculture smart. I know the president wants to make agriculture smart so that even you young people can feel or can take pride in farming because you are using new tools.
All right, now petroleum products will for the second year in a row be exempted from the annual inflation adjustment of excise task as the Kenya Revenue Authority treads the delicate balance between hitting its revenue targets and cautioning Kenyans from runaway cost of living. Commissioner General Githi Mburu says this is the only concession that will be extended as all other products earmarked for adjustment will be revised upward. Judith Cherono has the details.
The government has shelved plans to increase the excise tax on kerosene from 11 shillings and 37 cents per litre to 12 shillings and 8 cents, and that of super petrol from 21 shillings and 52 cents per litre to 22 shillings and 88 cents. This follows the exemption of petroleum products from the planned 6.3% increase in excise duty.
The only category we are going to leave out are petroleum products because of the currently very high prices of fuel. So we want to support Kenyans in ensuring that that price of fuel doesn't go higher.
In the month ended September 30th, Matatu fares posted the steepest month-on-month price increase by any commodity, growing by 25% compared to August. This was a reflection of the impact that the 15 billion shillings cutback of the fuel subsidy had on cost of living. Pundits now warn that despite the reprieve on petroleum products, the adjustment will push inflation to double digits.
You already understand that we are dealing with 8-point-something inflation, so that is expected to go up. And of course, with the increment of fuel prices, again, that is a ripple effect. Once you bring the excess duty, I don't know what to expect. It might be crisis because the inflation will be double-digit, as it were.
In November 2021, inflation adjustment of excise duty on petroleum products was halted following stay orders issued by the courts. Every year, KRA collects an average of 101 billion shillings through excise duty, making it a pivotal pillar in revenue mobilization. Judith Cherono, NTV Business.
Now, you may soon feel cash-strapped when buying many of the sweet treats commonly stocked in your fridge or the pantry. This is because the adjustment of inflation rates on excisable products is set to take place soon, according to the Kenya Revenue Authority Commissioner General Githi Mburu. The rates will target your favorite juice, alcoholic beverages, chocolates and cigarettes when affected. Genetically reports.
It is this public notice issued by the Kenya Revenue Authority which drew resistance from many business owners and consumers who urged the Commission not to revise the rates on excisable products upwards. However, following the authority's process of public participation, a decision was finally made.
From where we stand as KRA, we have given the leave of notice for publication. If it was not published on Friday, then I would expect it maybe it was done over the weekend or even today. It will affect excisable products other than petroleum products.
The rates of excisable products will be adjusted using the average inflation rate for the financial year 2021/2022, which is 6.3%.
What was it for? Why were we waking up early in the morning to vote a government which gave a promise that itapunguza vitu chini?
Among the items will be fruit juice and alcoholic beverages, among others, with members of the Bar Owners Association especially displeased by the government's decision.
Watu wengi wataenda kwa pombe mbaya ama chang'aa. Hii pombe ikiongezewa na hiyo bei imeongezewa, hili ni jaribio la 3 kwa muda wa miezi 10. Tunangojea kwamba watu 12,000 wanabiashara hata wa hapa watafunga biashara.
But others have lauded the move to increase tax on alcoholic beverages.
Hata wakitaka kuweka chupa ya Tusker itoke 1,000, hiyo ni mzuri kwa sababu haitusaidii sisi. Inasaidia tu walevi wenyewe, lakini kwa vitu kama unga, vitu zile basics needs, mafuta, unga, sukari, vitu kama hizo. Angalau at least hata kama hawatashuka sana, penye iko hivi ni 100% washuke ikuje ka 80%.
Bar owners, especially in the coast region, saying this will affect tourism, which was just regaining its balance after a tumultuous period after the pandemic hit.
Ukimpigia mtalii aliyekuwa msimu uliopita ukamuuliza kwa nini huji holiday, anakuambia mimi niko Zanzibar, mimi niko Tanzania, mimi niko Uganda, kwa sababu maisha hizi nchi za jirani ya Kenya, maisha ya huko iko affordable.
Tunapata watalii hata wa kutoka hapa Kenya nchini wanapenda kuja Mtwapa. Ikiwa bia zitakuwa hazigusiki kibei, basi naona sisi wengi tutabidi turudi nyumbani.
Now, if you have a sweet tooth, your sugar rush is likely to be on a downward spiral once the excise duty rates take effect, as confectionery items are on the hit list and expected to rise by a couple of shillings.
Mezoea kwenda na sweet 3 kwa watoto wangu jioni. Sasa nitakuwa na wakata, napeleka 2, nakosa 1. Unaona nitalea vita kwa nyumba.
Shopkeepers also complain that the rates will chase away their customers who often buy sweets and cigarettes on the go.
Sweets zikiongezwa bei, mimi sitakuja kununua. Na nikikosa kukuja kununua, supplier ataleta. Suppliers wasipokosa kuleta, kampuni zitakuwa zitafanya production na bado zitabaki kwa kampuni, meaning they will not give sales.
Sigara inaleta shida sana hata kwa sasa. Kuna wenye wananunua zingine at 20 bob and they end up wanauliza mbona tunawanyanyasa kuwauzia at 20 bob and inafaa cost 10 bob. Si unaona hapo? So it will affect sana.
Other items on the list whose excisable duty will be revised upwards per unit include fruit and vegetable juices, bottled water, liquid beers and ciders, powdered beer, wine, spirits and liquors, plain cigarettes without filters and cigarettes with filters, as well as cigars. Imported white chocolate, imported sugar confectionery, imported ready-to-use SIM cards, motorcycles of tariff number 87.11. However, locally assembled motorcycles and motorcycle ambulances are exempt. Gena Kirori, NTV.
Well, the Gor Mahia Football Club and High Court Advocate Senior Counsel Otiende Amolo, who is one of the partners in the Rachier and Rachiera, and Amolo law firm, have issued separate statements stating that they are not part of the Freemasons Society. This is after the High Court Advocate Ambrose Rachier, who is Gor Mahia's chairman, confessed to being a member of the Freemason Society for 28 years now.
On Sunday evening, High Court Advocate and scholar Dr. Ambrose Rachier went public about his membership in the Freemasonry Society, which to many Kenyans is an organization that is shrouded in mystery.
And you tell them today we are going for Freemasonry, usually around 6 o'clock or so, and by 9 o'clock or so you had to tell them, please don't keep dinner for me today, I'm going to have dinner at the Freemasons Hall.
Following his revelation, one of his 6 other business partners, Rarieda lawmaker and senior counsel Dr. Paul Otiende Amolo, has come out distancing himself from the partner's confession. In a statement on his social media page, Amolo states, "Interesting times. Have seen an interview by my law firm partner Ambrose Rachier on Freemasonry. I am not and will never join Freemasonry. Let it be known that the law firm of Rachiel and Amolo is not associated with the movement." The other 5 partners are yet to communicate, but reports indicate they were taken by surprise when their partner went public and are set to issue a joint statement on the same. Gor Mahia Football Club issued a statement called Club Concern through its Secretary General Sam Ochola. Ochola says the executive committee members, players, employees and Gor Mahia Football Club assures their fans that they are not part of the Freemason Society and that the chairman's affiliation to the society is their personal journey as attested in the media, requesting all fans of the club to stay calm as they mitigate the way forward.
When I went to visit, this is what I was given, Gor Mahia FC.
Dr. Ambrose Rachier is now the longest-serving chairman of the club, which has won a record number of Kenyan Premier League titles under his reign. A section of Kenyans have also given their opinion on the matter.
Kuna siri, na hiyo siri, watueleze hiyo siri kwanza tujue hiyo ni nini?
Katiba ambayo tuko nayo kwa sasa
ambayo imekubali kila mtu anaweza kwenda kwa dhehebu yoyote ambayo inayofurahisha yeye.
Mimi kama fan wa Gor Mahia hatujafurahishwa na hiyo mambo ya Rachel Ambrose, kwa sababu chenye tuliona jana hatuko na yeye. Yeye mwenyewe amejua vile aliingia huko na atoke mwenyewe, but yeye mwenyewe alisema hawezi katoka because amemaliza almost 30 years kama ako tu kwa hiyo Freemasons. From 1994 mpaka saa hizi is almost 30 years.
Ndugu yangu, siwezi kubaliana na hiyo kitu, but on the other side nimefurahia sana that hii kitu imekuwa revealed, ya kwamba watu wamejua ya kwamba kuna hii jambo la Freemasonry in our nation.
Freemason was there even before, and I can say that as we look to the ancient days, there is things like Egypt, those all things, it is a reputation.
Hili swala la Freemasons lilikuja tu from nowhere, hatujui hata kutoka wapi. Sisi tunafanya kushangaa tu tunasikia kuna Freemasons. Freemasons kutoka wapi? Hatuelewi kwanza miungu watu hao waliumbwa na nani?
Duncan Haemba, NTV.
Well, a 19-year-old from Nakuru County is developing a robot that he hopes will assist Kenyan military officers in countering terrorism in conflict-prone areas and reducing the impact of casualties on the front lines. David Lawrence Kamau has been working on the craft for 7 years using locally available resources, hoping the idea will become a reality and promote the country's ICT sector. And to visit Ruth Sarmoy visited the home and prepared this report.
We visit David Lawrence Kamau at his home in Mzewanyama area of Nakuru County and find him in his temporary workshop working on his prototype robotic project.
Meaning that we are making it very intelligent.
The sole purpose of the robot that resembles a dog, he says, is to help the military officers disarm and detonate explosives set by enemies while on the battlefield.
You know, a robot is a computer, and computers are very accurate. So the chance of mistakes are very minimal compared to a human being trying to deactivate that. So there's no, in the future, there's no need even to expose our soldiers to certain hazards. If a machine ikikuwa destroyed, it's very different from a person being killed. You know, a machine you can replace, but human life, no. So this is something that will save a lot of lives.
I wonder what you were doing or could be doing at 14 years of age. But for David Lawrence, that's when he started making these robotic dogs, including this one that was made in 2021 using cloth hangers, before he advanced to the sixth one, which was made recently using metallic parts.
So hii ni robot ya 6. Nimekuwa nikiunda kila mwaka nikidevelop according to the errors I saw. Na pia nina advance to pole according to the resources that I have, because building a robot means you have to combine ICT, mechanics and electronics.
Hii mambo zake za kuwa creative alianza akiwa mdogo kabisa, hata toys zake akiwa mdogo hakuwa anazitupa. Hata in fact mimi nilikuwa nazitupa kama ajui. Alikuwa naziweka pamoja. Sasa ameendelea hivyo akiwa primary, akaanza kuunda ndege ya mbao, aka-advance, akaanza ya machuma. Sasa akaendelea hivyo mpaka wakati tumefika saizi hivi. Lakini tulikuwa tunaona tu kama ni mchezo. Tukaanza sasa kumpea support.
He says the raw materials required to make the prototype is hard to come by, forcing him to make do with whatever materials are available at home.
Despite the challenges, huwa mi niko na that self-belief that no man is limited. So hata kama nimeface financial challenge ya kupata specific gears, what do I do? Naenda natumia baiskeli. Kama niko na challenge ya kupata certain computers, so naweza tumia hata hii simu kadogo. In the skeleton.
Lack of funds has become a major challenge for this budding scientist, a mountain that is faced by many creative minds.
Even in Science Congress, tulikuwa a lot of ideas, but some of them hazifiki the target, kwa sababu most are very good ideas zenye maybe zinaweza kuwa unaona maybe it's not something technical, but once you prove your idea, unaona ni kitu very much possible.
The first-year student of Thika Technical Institute believes that the diploma in electrical and electronic engineering will enable him to realize his dream.
Because we learn about wires, we learn about electrical connections. So it's something that will do me real good.
Welcome.
TV media company, welcome to our home in Pipeline.
And while on this journey, David has managed to modify a software program that will control and communicate with the robot, but the project, he says, is far from completion.
The software, I've downloaded it for now because I don't have a computer to actually do my ICT research, to actually be able to make one. But putting in mind that the robot is 3-in-1, ICT, electronics and mechanics, I've been able to perfect on mechanics and part of electronics. So the ICT is where I'm still working on it. So these countries, zimeanza kuunda like United States of America, Dubai, there's a certain building called the Museum of the Future. This museum has a lot of projects that are targeting the future. So this is the expected end result of the mechanical part.
He is calling on the government to accommodate and support young scientists of his kind and boost the country's technological developments. Ruth Sarmoi, NTV, Nakuru.
All right, interesting story there. Thanks, Ruth. Now to another report here, quite a sad one indeed. Police in Mombasa have started an investigation into a mysterious fire that razed down a house in Mombasa, causing the death of 2 minors. Now the police are going after their father, whom they suspect of setting up the deathly inferno. Our Coast Region reporter Fatma Bugu tells us that the tragedy may have occurred as a result of a family dispute.
Before a family squabble set them apart yesterday, Maria and Jackson Chacha were husband and wife. They had 3 children, all living in this house in Bombolulu.
Akanitoa kwa nguvu kwa nyumba. Ikabidi tu nikatoka nikatafuta mahali pa kujistiri. Angalau ikifika asubuhi nirudi niangalie wanangu.
Maria says she received a devastating phone call from her husband several hours later, between 2 and 3 a.m. on Monday. Around the same time Jackson Chacha was speaking, a mysterious fire was rising down their house in Bombolulu with their 3 children inside.
Sasa moto umeshika tayari na watoto wako ndani. Sasa tu wakasefia ule mmoja msichana na wengine hatukujua kama wako ndani.
2 of the 3 children were found dead by the time the full picture of the tragedy in the little known Ziwa la Ng'ombe ward was discovered.
Kwa hivyo tutafanya postmortem tujue ukweli zaidi kuhusiana na incident hiyo.
Police have now started an investigation into the possible double homicide, with Jackson Chacha at the center of the tragedy. The father of the 3 is still on the run.
Kama walikuwa watoto wamewashinda, ziko nyumba za watoto wangepeleka badili kufanya vitu kama ama ukosana na bibi, ya nini kisasi ulipia watoto?
Kina mama, kina baba, hata kina baba wanaumizwa sana ndani ya ndoa. Pia wajitokeze, wasione aibu kujitokeza kusema ile masaibu wanapitia.
Investigators are banking on a post-mortem examination report on Tuesday to reveal what happened. The body of the 8 and 4-year-old minors are currently at Coast General Hospital mortuary while police search for Chacha. Fatma Bugu, NTV, Mombasa.
Well, indeed, a very unfortunate report there by Fatma Bugu. Let's now get a look at what's in the dailies. We'll begin with the Daily Nation. This is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. It is the state of the shilling, the Gachagua and Njoroge policy divide. Well, economic crisis limping against the dollar and other benchmark international currencies, facing an uncertain future as inflation hits a 63-month high and battered by high global crude oil prices. The Kenya shilling is on a free fall. Its value so uncertain that banks were yesterday hoarding dollars and causing a biting forex shortage that affected trade and risked lifting the inflation figures quite further. So the value of the shilling against the dollar yesterday marking a 6.7% drop since the start of the year, when it stood at, let me get that figure correct, 113 shillings, and forcing the country to pay more in external debt and traders to mark up their goods. I'm not alone in studio. Right now I am with Jim India, political and governance analyst. Thank you so much for joining us, Jim.
Thank you.
So this is the state of the shilling. This is where we are. We'll talk about that little bit of divide between the deputy president and the CBK governor with regard to the forex rate. But economic crisis, what do you make of this? The fact that, we get the dollar and other benchmark international currencies facing uncertain future as inflation is hitting, what, a 63-month high?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that the president was very categorical on, that the economy, one of our greatest challenges right now as a nation is the economy. The Kenyan shilling is weak. That has repercussions on our imports. The goods that we're bringing into the country, we're buying them at we're spending a lot more of our money buying goods outside. That's why the prices of oil keep going up and every other goods, because anyone who's bringing in goods is now passing on the costs to the consumer. And so the cost of living cannot, will keep going high until we stabilize the shilling against the dollar particularly.
Okay, we'll get to that. So that's on page 7. There's a full report there. But still on the front page of the Daily Nation, Raila versus Ruto, D-Day in battle for parliament. Well, the president, that's William Ruto's Kenya Kwanza and Raila Odinga's Azimio, are today headed for a major clash in the National Assembly over the lead of the majority in the House after both camps staked their claim to the position. I mean, we've had this conversation so many other times over really who has the majority in the House, on paper, on ground. That's on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation, Jim. So, I mean, are we likely then to see the end of this soon today? I mean, today we are.
Yeah, today we should. We're not certain that we will, but we should. I know we were here a while back and discussed it at length, but the Speaker is scheduled to rule on this matter once and for all. We're hoping that his ruling will be received well by both parties, and that we shall not see someone going to court to stop, the speaker's ruling. But of course, the intricacies are now interesting. There are interesting developments since our last conversation, for instance, with the Registrar of Political Parties writing to the clerk and stating very categorically, in very clear terms, that Azimio is the majority. And she gave the numbers, 185. So it will be interesting, however, because this totally settles with the speaker.
But it all, I mean, so
how he ends up then defining the law and defining who, the different articles of the Constitution and provisions of the Political Parties Act.
It will also set the, the pace within which his leadership, people will be able to, determine how his leadership style will be, at least in the next, term. So, yeah, that is something interesting to watch out for. But we are not alone. Joining us in studio as well is Dr. Duncan Ojwang. A very good morning, Daktari.
Good morning.
Karibu sana. We are well. So we are looking at the papers. Because we passed this, let me just get, your quick reaction on the very front page of the Daily Nation. Perhaps you've seen it. That's the state of the shilling, and we're looking at the value of the shilling against the dollar making a 6.7% drop since the start of the year. At the very beginning of the year, we started at 113, but that is forcing the country to pay more on external debt, traders to mark up their goods. It's quite not a very rosy affair when it comes to this.
Yeah, I can see that the shilling has been hit, but I think it is relative with the transitions. More so, remember, one of our reasons of let us not fight has been that we lose much more. So one, to just say it could have been way worse, but number two, you can see that with the measures being undertaken, I think we can see the trend. I'm more interested in the trend, and with that trend, we have been in downward trend, and we were promised by His Excellency that we will be making the curve, the direction towards positive trend. I think from now we are waiting to see how we are projecting towards positive, including our dollars.
All right. So another report here, Raila versus Ruto D-Day in battle. This is today. I know we've had that conversation and a lot of explanations with regard to the majority issue in the National Assembly, but we're still back there. That's fully covered on pages 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation.
Right. We remember the Marende Solomonic wisdom when it was the issue of leader of business, government business. Every body holding a state officer or a constitutional office is required to interpret the Constitution. So, of course, the Speaker must interpret and correctly so the Constitution. It's not only not the court that interpret everybody. Court only have the final say if there's a controversy on how to interpret it. So we are waiting bated breath to see the new development, of course, whether the Speaker also have given the parties chances to declare where they are, which I think will be the wise thing to do, that, you know, this is not a matter of census. His office have a direct bearing on the matter, and they need to tell all those political parties to state their membership or lack of it in coalitions, so that his decision is guided by his record. He cannot get away by simply saying, you know, I took the record from the registrar. So they need that clarification. Give them time. Let every coalition and every party write, state, let him count. Let him balance those things. So I don't expect the ruling today. I will expect him to give this work time. Hopefully time enough so that those who are straddled between coalitions.
Right.
And remember the window, even legally, of moving is only
almost
30 days.
Right. So that should be the 9th of November.
Yeah. So if he gives them 30 days to clarify their status, and then come with the Solomonic ruling.
All right. Let's hear from also joining us, of course, very good morning, Hesbon Owila, Karibu Sana, media and political communications expert. So we have talked about the state of the shilling. This is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. And of course, please, we want to hear your thoughts on what is happening in the National Assembly. Remember, this is their first sitting ever since getting into office. So this should be perhaps the first agenda. But this is the state of the shilling. What do you say of that?
Well, I think, you know, coming from an electioneering period and the turmoil and the disruption that we've seen in the world, you know, the global shocks basically tells you that we have a hell of work to do ahead with the new government to bring it back to some very stable exchange rates. And I think from the political front, it's just important that we don't continue sending shockwaves that we've seen in the public domain. Matters of you know, finance, the exchange rate, availability of the dollar, I think are better left to experts and not politicians. So certain statements that we've had are not helping the situation. But certainly for a country like Kenya that depends on a lot of import, I think it's just good that we see a very proactive measure towards a stable exchange rate between the shilling and the dollar.
All right. Let me hear your thoughts on this as well. Major clash on the floor of the House.
Well, I think on paper, you know, there are different interpretations of the act, yeah? And I think the biggest interpretation that is taken by the two different political formations is the question of a coalition political party and a coalition of political parties, you know. And the argument that I've seen, you know, the Kenya Kwanza folks propagate is that Azimio only has 2 members. That is Raila Odinga and Martha Karua. And I think that is where the speaker has to be very Solomonic, that if the act talks about a corporate coalition political party, does it mean that if your political party is a member of this corporate political party, you are by default, an elected member of this corporate political party. In which case, any politician who is elected on a political party that is within the Azimio coalition is actually an Azimio member of parliament. So you cannot, if that is the interpretation, then you cannot say that Azimio is not a parliamentary political coalition. And then if that, again, is the interpretation, it is just important to go to the documents that were filed at the Register of Political Parties and ascertain what were these documents saying and to what extent, is fidelity to the dictates of the law and what the documents that different political parties lodged says. And after that, I mean, it's fairly clear that if the law stipulates and the law has been interpreted correctly, then the question of numbers is self-determining. But, I mean, politicians make the work of judges a lot more difficult, right? Because one thing I know is that Kenya Kwanza is very good at propagating a narrative. They can propagate a narrative that my name is not Hesbon until I start doubting myself. But as I say, I think it's just important that okay. The speaker rises beyond the political bickering and makes a ruling that is Solomonic. Okay, I hear Danka. You want to respond to that?
Two things. One, ab initio, it is much ado about nothing, because whether you are called majority or minority, there is no government bill. It will have to be a vote. And if the coalition, Kenya Kwanza coalition, now have majority of the members in the House, they will still be able to pass all their bills. So whether they call themselves minority or they agree to say we are minority, our bills are going to come, because even minority leader have opportunity to table bills. And if they have numbers, and they have numbers because we have seen the shift, then they will still be passing their bills without any problem. If that is, Azimio are happy and lured by the name majority, that in facts and in practice and praxis, it will make no difference. But secondly...
Well, so there's no difference. Are there pacts to which the majority coalition holds, are there advantages to being a majority in parliament as opposed to being a minority? Perhaps that's why there's a clamor?
Every bill must be passed by individual votes. And so Kenya Kwanza have numbers. And therefore, there is no program that is probably government that Azimio can stall whether they take the name majority. Because it will be individual MPs voting for each and every bill, whether it is brought by somebody called the majority leader or the minority leader. And so, but number two, of course, it is important because the Constitution recognizes the idea of there is somebody called the leader of majority.
Who holds a higher position than the minority leader?
Who hold a higher position. Both of them are important offices, yes. So yes, it's a recognized office, and so who occupies it then become important. What I'm saying is that in earnest, it makes no big difference for the government that their program will be stalled. But even coming to that, I don't know how the speaker can run away, because the Constitution binds everyone interpreting the law to follow the Constitution, and that is why. The challenge that will come with the interpretation that Hesbon is saying is that then they will be, Azimio people will belong to two parties, which is unconstitutional. Because Azimio coalition was registered as a political party. ODM is also a political party. And it is unconstitutional to be a member of both. So if you have counted them as ODM party members, and that was the basis that even the nomination slots were given, and that is their certificate that they ran as ODM members, then you cannot, so it is not a difference without substance. There is no way there can be coalition the Azimio Coalition political party, which was registered as a political party, not as an entity. They amalgamated and became one, and at the same time become ODM. So what Azimio is asking the speaker to do is to actually lower them and say, assume we are not a party, one party called Azimio, and call us a coalition of different parties, meaning we are not one party. And that is the
Do you think there's a gray area in terms of the law there?
Yeah, let me just, because
as you're getting the constitution?
Yeah, we get to court on this Political Parties Act. Yeah? We went to court on this Political Parties Act.
Right.
There is no gray area. We saw, even from TV, when in December, people were fighting because Azimio undertaking was, we want the law to allow a coalition to form a political party.
Correct.
Kenya Kwanza took the stand of saying, we don't want to become a party, we want to be a loose arrangement called coalition. Now Azimio are running from the very successful bill that they sponsored, that court said was legal. Yes, you guys can come together and become a party. So you cannot be in ODM and be in Azimio because there are two different parties.
Okay, let's
I think the argument that Daktari makes is perhaps the same argument he made in court. Because he was in court on this matter. He was on court in this matter, and the court pronounced itself. One, there were a lot of parties that objected to the whole idea of parties forming parties, but the courts allowed it to happen. And so I think the matter of whether Azimio is a party or not, that was already decided. The courts allowed them that they can actually become a party.
Correct.
And as such, the report from the Registrar of Political Parties to the clerk equally says that these guys are a party and their member, other individual constituent political parties within that party. It is not a confusion because if the office of the registrar allowed it, the courts allowed it to begin with, any challenge arising from it then again needs to be argued in a higher court because the High Court already pronounced itself on it. But looking at it from a very easy way, it's Azimio need a win. To put it plainly, Azimio need one win. They need just one thing to go away with. They need to go home with some meat. They need to show their supporters that for all that we've taken you through, there is something to show for it.
Right.
And I think the battle right now, it is to restore hope in their foot soldiers. That look, we lost the presidency, we are minority at the Senate, but there is the one thing that we are the majority in Parliament. I know Daktari in the National Assembly, I know Daktari says that the majority and minority does not mean much because bills are passed through individual numbers.
But essentially
But ultimately, there is the bragging rights that Azimio is trying to come up with and say, anyway, saving face, that anyway, we are the majority in the National Assembly. And so I hope that the Speaker equally recognizes and can read the mood of the nation and play to that.
All right, look, we'll continue with taking a look at the paper in a moment. We're going to have to take another short, just our first break here on M Live. You can talk to us. The hashtag we're using this morning is MLiveNTV at NTV Kenya. Talk to us. We'll be back in a few minutes.
As a manager, Roberto Mancini has dealt with success and failure, but is known for more of the former than the latter. There has also been success and failure with Italy, reaching the extremes of both. But after a depressing low, Mancini is leading Italy back, perhaps towards another rapturous high. This is the Football Review.
Crystal Rivers Residences along Mombasa Road comprises 3-bedroom apartments, 3-bedroomed and 4-bedroom townhouses. The only mixed-use development close to the Nairobi Expressway. Easy payment plans available. Terms and conditions apply. Call 0757 620 202.
You can't miss this one.
These two teams are evenly matched.
Just going at it. Two championship hopefuls.
Fires away. What a move! An incredible block!
One, making sure you still fear the deer.
Goodness! Threw it to himself. He's eviscerating the Celtics.
And the other out to show luck.
Williams slammed down.
Has nothing to do with it. but only one can advance.
When cooling down is easy, this easy. Nice. You even took it with a smile.
What about yours?
What brings you here?
Well, there is something we wanted to ask you, Victoria.
What is it? We have spoken to Rigor's coach. He told us that you and Rigor still saw each other after the SEA Games. Is this true? Carlos, what's wrong?
Mom, I'm getting worried.
Worried about?
Dad was there.
So, what's wrong with that? Don't you like it that he's slowly supporting you?
Mom, no, let me explain myself. Dad was there for Gabriel. Dad and he was talking about... He wanted to know all about Gabriel's mother.
Forever, my love. Crystal Rivers Residences along Mombasa Road comprises 3-bedroomed apartments, 3-bedroomed and 4-bedroom townhouses. The only mixed-use development close to the Nairobi Expressway. Easy payment plans available. Terms and conditions apply. Call 0757 620 202.
In your paper this week, Ebola fears. Ugandan health officials suggest COVID-like restrictions that saw schools and worship centers shut down. Truckers back in business at the Mombasa port after directive. Plus our opinion leaders. The likes of daddies rule by issuing orders that citizens dare not oppose. Generali Ulimwengu. Ugandan MPs don't need reading and writing skills anymore. Joachim Buembo. Outlook. Militants in DR Congo play hide and seek as regional foes close in. Magazine. Team Amani rides to high places and fame. For these and more stories, get your copy of the East African.
Retirement Benefits Authority will be in Nakuru at the Huduma Center from Monday 3rd to 7th October. Our officers will be on the ground to answer questions you have on saving for retirement, registering and licensing of schemes, member education, and retirement planning and financial literacy.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching M Live on MTV. We are certainly looking at what's in the dailies. I think we're going to move forward from what's here. We might get it much deeper into it, but we have to move on from that. So still very important news here. Yesterday, Cabinet lifts ban on GM foods. The move expected to lower food prices through increased local food production as well as imports. So the Cabinet has lifted the ban on open cultivation of genetically modified crops, this coming after 10 years, and it follows the recommendation of a task force that was put in place to review matters relating to the genetically modified foods safety, which means the lifting of the ban, as noted in a press statement from the Executive Office of the President, came after a Cabinet meeting to deliberate on the ongoing drought in 23 counties and to review the ongoing humanitarian support and provision of relief food in those areas. Of course, I do not expect you gentlemen to be scientists, but this is a story that we've been following up for the past decade after it was banned. I think it was Beth Mugo who was the then Cabinet Minister for Agriculture. I begin with you. Yes, it was Beth Mugo, I believe, right? Correct. So, if I do not get right, I'm going to check on that in just a moment. But I'll start with you, Esbon. Perhaps, what do you think of this? So we're moving forward. There were safety concerns, and there were concerns of, you know, when it was banned, you know, the issue was there's cancer. You know, it causes cancer, GMO, and so we moved from that as a country. But then we're back here because remember the report that stated that GMO foods were causing cancer in the country, in fact, was retracted by the same scientists who published it in a medical journal.
Well, I think as a country, there's a lot that we need to do to ensure that we have food security. And as you rightly say, I'm not a scientist, but I'm a worried Kenyan. Worried simply because this has come just from nowhere. We've not seen conversations around it. We've not seen the papers that, you know, authoritatively say that this is the best way to address food security in this country. We've just seen conversations around GMOs in other countries, and those countries are doing well. People are not dying in those countries. And I think that's probably not very convincing for lay people like us who have lived knowing that, you know, food has to be fairly organic. But I think as a new government, I think they have to do a lot, you know, to address the challenges that are facing Kenyans today. Given the way they rode into power, I think their concern is basically the person at the bottom of the pyramid who seems to be suffering the brunt of, you know, economic hardships. But I would say this, you know, agriculture is probably the most underutilized, you know, potential in this country. Because as a country, I mean, Kenya is one of the economies that is highly dependent on agriculture and thriving. But we still have potential to expand our agriculture beyond, you know, the rain, you know, fed agriculture. If you look at what the NAC government had, you know, in 2003 when they came to power, they were looking at getting into the arid and semi-arid areas and expanding our agricultural production. So the conversation that we have today has nothing to do with how do we expand, you know, our agricultural land? How do we tap on this land that has never been tapped to increase food production, to a situation where we want quick fixes, GMOs. So, and you see, it has always been fertilizer. So pumping fertilizer, increase production. But there is also soil exhaustion. So for me, it's a question of, first, if you're going GMO, I mean, what is the robust rationale for taking us in that direction? And what are scientists saying, not necessarily politicians? So cabinet has made a decision.
Because we've heard from scientists, and a majority of scientists in Kenya actually are quite excited about this particular news, because they're saying, in fact, it's going to secure our, you know, our country when it comes to issues of food.
You know, the reason why science is good is because science deals with not just what it is going to produce in terms of food, but what are the consequences? What are the other mitigative factors that made it difficult for us to embrace GMOs, and have they been addressed? So at what cost are we going to have genetically modified food? To what extent is it going to interfere with our biodiversity? And how sustainable is this? You know, I think those are the critical questions that we don't need from, you know, politicians or people who occupy positions where they speak to issues, but we need the root, you know, empirical data from scientists to allay any fear that we may have.
All right. Dr. Ojwang, remember the cabinet, it says it also considered reports of the World Health Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization, that is the FDA, that's in the US, and the European Food Safety Authority in reaching this particular decision. And according to the statement, the change in policy was preceded by a decision made by the cabinet in 2019 to commercialize the production of a variety of GM cotton that is resistant to pests. And yes, I have confirmed it is Beth Mugo, but she was not the agriculture minister. She was the public health cabinet minister.
Yeah, I think that it is good when you see a cabinet making decision based on science and data. And of course, there have been a lot of debate. I have been involved in this debate for the last 10 years on GMOs. And of course, you know that the president himself is a scientist. I think having a PhD in zoology, that is a scientist, probably better than us social researchers. But one of the challenges, even then, we were looking at it legally. There is a very good paper written by Professor Kameri Mbote, is that meanwhile, food aid and the maize that were being imported are GMOs. So even as Kenyans were saying they have locked their border from GMOs, all those maize that were coming in to aid and help us are GMOs. And so that there was that contradiction. Number two, the scientists, and I know Oduor has been pushing for this, and we have spoken a lot about it. They are looking at fellow scientists able to code and register unique plants so that they are protected under the not copyright, but for
intellectual.
Not intellectual. Yeah, part of intellectual property. So we know Monsanto have patented many seeds. So, the Kenyan scientists could not patent anything because for you to patent it, you must remove it from the natural status and add some innovation. So they were looking at their colleagues across the globe, rushing and patenting. And so even as Kenya had put a stop on GMO, what Monsanto will do is to go to US, patent it there, then it is still protected under RIPO because Kenya is a member of the international intellectual property. So even if it wasn't patented here, because you don't believe in GMO, but once it is registered in any country, and because you are a member of WTO, you must then protect that patent. So the scientists were looking at their colleagues in other countries. It's a rush, a very mad rush, to patent different seeds, and then the indigenous Kenya seeds are not being patented, and they are seeing people coming from America and wherever and patenting them other places and registering them. And once they register it, it now belongs to them. That when you are to use them, you must pay them royalty and all that. So look at the rising population. 2 weeks ago, almost embarrassed, you saw Excellency saying, this is the last time I'm flagging food aid. We are not food sufficient. We cannot feed ourselves. We are seeing what GMO have done in Uganda and how it has given them, there is food in Uganda. They come across border and we consume them, even though in books. So for the 10 years we have been hypocrites. The books have said no GMO, but all the aid and most of the food coming through Kenya, not most, but a good number, have been GMO, and we consume them, and we are okay. So I'm glad that, when cabinet do not do witch logic of saying this is how I feel, and it's led by science, then it makes sense. I think there are some measures that can be undertaken. I'm usually afraid of the traditional seed. My grandma's seeds that she smokes on top of the kitchen and then goes and plant, and whether that will be affected, that can be protected legally, so that because the Constitution also recognizes right to culture, and within our culture we have our traditional seeds. So I think there's a good balance to protect Kenyans and make sure that we have reliable food for our population.
Yes, Jim.
So I hold that there's no such thing as organic food in Kenya. I do not think anyone who thinks they're consuming organic food, you're not. If you look at the pesticides that we're using on our farms, you look at the fertilizers that we're using, a lot of it is chemicals, and they go on to alter the genetic of the particular seed that we're using. At the heart, any plant has a seed. And so what GMO is basically saying, if you have a variety of potatoes that is being attacked by, say, late blight, and late blight in, say, for instance, potato, affects 40% of production, reduces production by 40%. So you then take a variety of potatoes that is resistant to that particular disease, and you then crossbreed the two potatoes, and then you have a superior seed that is able to withstand the pressures of any other disease. Now, once you do that, you then make a country more food secure, because in the age of climate change, we need to find innovative ways of ensuring that we can feed our populations. Technology did not come just so that we may use M-Pesa. technology came so that we can harness a lot more of it. We can harness technology in agriculture, we can harness technology in schools, and so we cannot be afraid of going and using technology. We cannot embrace technology partially, because the beauty of it is we are able to find crops that are drought resistant. We are able to find crops that grow in shorter time, so that we don't have to waste our farms for 6 months waiting for maize, while we could actually grow that maize for 2 months, 3 months, and still have the same quality of maize. At the end of the day, it is that we have to ensure that, one, whoever is growing GMO food or GMO seeds, we have to register them, so that not anyone, the people who don't want to use GMO, have to reserve their right not to use it. We must label it, so that if you do not want to use it,
So
you actually have the option.
It's not an imposition on the Kenyan people that you have to
No.
choices.
The flour that comes from GMO has to be correctly labeled that this is a GMO flour, so that as a Kenyan, if I am okay with using GMO, I should have the option to actually use it. But number two, we also have to be able to track and trace the seeds, so that whichever seeds we are getting that are GMO, the government should account for each seed and say this seed was planted by farmer X in this place, and this is the production that they had. That's the only way we're able to control it, because if you don't control it, just like any other thing, it has the capacity of affecting us ultimately.
All right, let's just move on from that as well. I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot, especially from the experts there, with regard to the same. This is what's on the 7th page of the Daily Nation. Weak shilling leaving Kenya paying dearly for imports and loans. I think we covered that on the first page of the Daily Nation, which also follows by fuel now exempted from new KRA taxes. The Kenya Revenue Authority excluding fuel from the list of products whose prices are set to go up following an annual inflation tax adjustment. The excise duty on a range of goods, including beer, bottled water and juice, is set to increase by 6.3% from this month, in line with the average annual inflation. The annual excise adjustment is normally effected to match the inflation rate, which hit 9.2% in September, a record in 63 consecutive months. And the data released yesterday by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics shows the high inflation rate was driven by a sharp increase in the cost of maize flour, electricity, fuel and transport in September. All right, so this is where we are when it comes to the state of the economy, but still just moving forward. Report, a third of Kenyan households are in 6 counties, Nairobi leading the counties that host 15 million Kenyans. Projection, country to have a population of 57 million by 2030. But 6 counties are hosting more than a third of households and 30% of Kenya's population, according to this report by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. It is estimated, shows that of the estimated 50.6 million Kenyans, 14.9 million live in 6 densely populated counties, which include Nairobi, Kiambu, Nakuru, Kakamega, Meru, and Bungoma counties. So about 15 million Kenyans are all within these 6 counties, as other 41 counties share the rest of the population. But with the largest population of 4.67 million in 2022, Nairobi leads the pack. Hesbon, I mean, we are densely populated here in the capital, and I think there's a lot to attribute that to. You know, this is the capital city of the country, and many people see Nairobi as, you know, a land of opportunity, the capital city. But we've been told many times that there is life on the other parts of the country where we call, you know, Ushago. You know, we can't go to Ushago.
You know, it's the same situation that we have with Kenyans who are going to the Arab nations looking for work. So every day we see the plight of these Kenyans, but you can't stop them from going because there are no opportunities where they're coming from. And I think urbanization and population growth is one of the biggest issues. And globally, it's being discussed as a security threat because when people start scrambling for resources and, you know, the needs that people need to satisfy with these resources are infinite, but these resources are limited. So you would understand the reason why everyone is coming to Nairobi. It's not because there is anything good in Nairobi. It's simply because there is nothing worth being away from Nairobi for. You know, there are no opportunities, even with devolution, getting it into its, you know, 3rd generation of governors. But be it as it may, I think we have a government that has come with very interesting, you know, plans. They call their manifesto the plan. And I think one of the most interesting one was the Hustler Fund, the 50 billion Hustler Fund. And I've talked about this, I've written about the Hustlers Fund, borrowing from what has happened in so many other countries. One of the most interesting countries in terms of depopulating their cities is China, because every 5 to 10 years they build new cities with all the social amenities that would drive people to the city. And you can only do that by devolving resources and helping people create wealth in these peripheral counties, so to speak. If I pick my county of Migori, for instance, and I look at Migori against the backdrop of the Hustler Fund, I'm looking at this 50 billion being shared equitably among the counties. And if you do the maths, you realize that Migori would actually get around 800 million per year. If that 800 million is availed to hustlers in Migori, and then they are not just given this 800 million as credit, it is appropriated in terms of grant and loan. So grant to fund the investment capital, and then a loan, you know, to fund the working capital component of their business. But then this has to be rooted in data, that if you're in Migori, you should be doing business that is viable in Migori, that is economically viable. You cannot go to Migori and say you want to farm waru because it is not economically viable. So if research is done and, you know, the far-flung counties, you know, are exploited in terms of the resources that they have that can economically, you know, be utilized, and then the 50 billion Hustler Fund is pumped into these counties, you would empower people in these counties. You'd create wealth in these counties. People would find money just circulating in the economies of these counties, be it Isiolo, Nyeri, Migori, Wajir, Bungoma, and you'd have no incentive to come to Nairobi because, I mean, urban squalor is worse than being poor in the rural counties.
Right.
But still people come to Nairobi.
Right. Better opportunities. Jim?
I mean, at the end of the day, there are a lot of pressures that come with it. Every county has to do fiscal planning because, you know, we can create all the jobs that we want, but if we do not plan this, particularly Nairobi, Kiambu, Nakuru, Kakamega, well, then the result is you have cramped up spaces, you have people who cannot attain, you know, Article 43 of the Constitution on the economic rights, for instance. And we have to start then looking at development from a rights perspective, that we are not just providing water, it is a right to provide water. And so we are actually, as we undertake development, we take it from a rights point of view. But number two, the more that our towns are growing, the more that then it behooves our counties to take up their role more succinctly. Because this fiscal planning, urban planning and development is strictly under their mandate. They have the right to actually plan out their cities and say, how will we do housing? What will be the different parameters that we do? Right. How do you ensure that we can plan for 2050, where we will be 57 million people? Nairobi will probably be at 2 million citizens, or slightly more than 2 million citizens. So how do we plan for those citizens that they're able to live and live
because the
dignity?
Generations to come will certainly be looking, you know, at coming to
Everyone
urban areas
like
the capital city. They have, you know, aspirations. They have all these things that they hope to achieve.
Yeah. So if all the farms are coming to set up shop in Nairobi or in Mombasa or in Kakamega, then we also have to plan around that, because clearly we didn't have plans of building new cities. We tried with Konza City and Tetu City, and those are slightly out of the reach of many ordinary Kenyans. And so ensuring that we plan our cities and our towns well enough, because this is not something that we can stop. I know people can say, let's go and develop our indigenous counties and our rural counties so that then people move back there.
Right.
But that takes forever to do. So in the meantime, the young people who are getting out of universities and colleges every day, they're not going to sit back there and wait. They're going to come to the cities. So the cities have to plan better for them and not the other way around.
All right. Daktari, are you going to be in Nairobi perhaps? This is your plan to stay until you retire?
Are you sending me away?
I'm not sending you away. You can.
Maybe he's planning to relocate.
No, in fact, Homa Bay is his home county. Yeah. And very interesting things happening over the weekend. We'll talk about that.
By the way, I don't enjoy Nairobi. I don't.
Right.
because even of my walking style, I have to adjust when I'm walking in the city. Otherwise, you'll be bumping on people. You must be matching. Here you can match. And it takes a lot of practice. You go by the pace of those who are walking so that it's a choir, it's a dance of the bee. I don't enjoy it. I think for us to live in a sustainable way, the Constitution talk of the next generation and shared posterity. You said that the city poor are poorer. And that is true, that when it comes even to food, there has been statistics showing very high percentage of Nairobians eating 1 meal a day.
Correct.
So I think that, again, it is seeing opportunities, just like you hinted in Homa Bay, you know, cotton, seed of cows that can move us from Zebu to sustainability. The president launched a housing, which...
The affordable housing project?
Yes, and remember, the deliberate plan was, let us look for projects that are labor intensive to create jobs, rather than coming with a very big project that don't create a lot of jobs. So it is actually not just about housing, but giving people decent job opportunities. You know, I've spoken to Honorable Sakaja, and you know that he is very clear on what Nairobi has to do, so that we don't just say, how do we address jam in Nairobi, but understand that, one, open up the country, two, you know, that debate of population versus land, two, make sure that everywhere life is sustainable, not just in Nairobi. In fact, in my view, you know, do what South Africa did, where the Supreme Court was moved out of the city. Parliament was moved to Mombasa. Move things around the country and have us live in a sustainable way. But finally, I think that with the new generation and you know, our traditional rural-urban migration, we must think of the future, and that future must be where counties can sustain people's life. One of the goals of devolution was, today you go to Homa Bay and you see the big vehicles. Before, you'll only see the big vehicles, the big tire vehicle in Nairobi. Today, I'm glad that when you go to Machakos, you are seeing somebody driving VX or whatever, and that means that the devolution work. Let us create this bus well. Kisumu is going to have a direct flight for cargo. Why should tourists who are going to Masai Mara first check in Nairobi and not in Kisumu, then travel 6 hours down to Kisumu and then see Masai Mara and then come back? So we still have that mentality of centralism and making Nairobi the center, but we need to think that we have 48 governments.
Okay, let's move forward. Let's just wind up on the dailies here, and but I want to get, because you're both lecturers, so this is quite an important report here. Shame of unpaid part-time lecturers as varsities battle biting cash crunch. According to a source, universities have not paid salaries for long, some dating back to 2017 due to lack of funds. Now, being a part-time lecturer was once a prestigious job for most young academics. Not anymore. The financial crisis in universities has dampened the spirits of young scholars who depend on tutorial jobs to earn a living. And many lecturers in public universities have been teaching without receiving their salaries for months. We tie that to the report at the very end of the newspaper as well. Still on education matters. APRO, as schools send students home for school fees, principals say they cannot afford to feed the students due to financial constraints. I'll begin with you, husband. I mean, you're a lecturer. I mean, there's so many young lecturers who are part-time lecturers, but this is the reality they're facing.
Yeah, well, I think if there's something that probably the government needs to do is, you know, to address the education system and move beyond the basic education to higher education. These lecturers are the same lecturers who are training teachers who teach in these other, levels of education. They're the same lecturers who impart knowledge to the professionals that we have outside there.
Right.
And you see, the story that you have there affects me directly. When you talk about as early as 2017, before the 2017 elections, I taught in one of the universities in this country, a public university, which is supposed to be, one of financially solid universities. They've not paid us to date, and well, chances are there are people like Daktari here who hold so many other, full-time faculty jobs. But you can imagine fresh graduates who probably got first-class honors in undergraduate, enroll for masters, and, they are newly in the field.
Right.
They are assumed to be the elites in the society because they teach in a university. These are people who have families. And for you to move from a tutorial fellow to a lecturer, it takes time, and resources. And more often than not, you have to teach. And chances are you're teaching in a university that takes 5, 6, 7 years, and they're not paying you. And, you walk into the finance offices of some of these folks, and the arrogance you meet, and you're like, the core business of a university is teaching and research, And the people who are supposed to be taken care of are lecturers. And that is not happening. I don't think it's an easy, there is an easy solution to it, because the other threat that university vice chancellors, are having under the table is to triple the tuition fees in these universities. Now, if that happens, for them to pay lecturers, the ripple effect now is even dire, because then the access to university education to these students who cannot afford the tuition fee that we have right now. And I can tell you, when I was a student at Maseno University, there are students who could not survive in campus simply because they couldn't afford that fees. And these are students who are getting help loan. So the situation on the ground is dire. And the government has to find a way of dealing with these universities so that they're economically solvent to pay lecturers. And then the government also has to deal with the situation to ensure that fee is not increased to pay lecturers. Because I can tell you, even if they were to increase fees, my 280,000 or so will not be paid immediately. Chances are it won't even be paid. Because when you go there, you are told, you didn't apply. These are places where you offer service and then you apply for your money, And then when you apply, I've applied 4 times for my money, 4 times. Every time they keep losing it. Every time. The last time I told them, I'm not going to apply again if I have. And by the way, the most interesting thing is, there was a time I was called and told, come and pick your check. Then I sent someone that just picked my check from the cash office. The person went. The check was not there. I called the boss and I asked the boss, your officers have told me to come and pick the check, and all of a sudden, it is not there. Then I told this guy, but there must be some mischief. He was so arrogant. But 3, 4 weeks down the lane, it was in the news. It was in the news. Because I told him, if you don't investigate, all of you will sing. They sang. Probably you can read in between the line and know which university I'm talking about. So even the system within these universities, need to be overhauled. Right. Gone are the days when vice chancellors were demigods. The system has to be very transparent from top to bottom. Right. But most critically, they must find a way of dealing with the backlog of the people they've not paid. And even if they let some of us go, I think there's a generation of young men, I'm no longer that young, there's a generation of young men who are fresh from universities with masters who need to be mentored into the academy. Right. Otherwise, professors here will leave, but we won't have the next generation of good professors.
That's in fact from Prof on the same issue as well.
That is a sad reality that Bon is describing. I've seen in some universities the part-time lecturer line up in the cashier, by the cashier window. They're being asked, what did you supply, beans? No, I taught. Oh, no, I'm sorting the beans group today. You can see how denigrating that is. That, you supplied charcoal. No, me, I taught. So that I think the university are forgetting the core business, which is that all the rest are to facilitate learning and research. It has become, you know, where you find other supportive staff more comfortable. It started by rationalizing, where you find lecturer is paid the same with the librarian, with the dorm master, and things like that. Now, the task force is something, the CBC task force. In fact, second mandate is to check sustainability of universities and the issue of funding of the same. We are bleeding, and this is sending Kenya the dinosaurs route, in my view, because it is not sustainable. Lecturers are struggling, and then you are expected to still go to class with good attitude. You are expected to present grades, though you have not been paid, because people must graduate. And you wonder, are these angels? Imagine you have taught, you have not been paid, but you give us the grade, then we deal with each other. Courts have been very clear. I've seen cases where they have said, pay with interest, to make people not treat each other this way. But I think finally, in my view, you know, Vice Chancellor and all that, there was an act called the University Management, which made the university managed not by professors or academicians, but as a corporate. And they don't have a heart for teachers. And because of that, you find as people who are powerful in the university are not academicians anymore, even in public. According to the University Management Act, you find people who are not in academia, but they are the ones running the university. So this speaks to the quality of education directly, because this is the person whose attitude, whose demeanor, whose research, if you are not paid, you don't even have a book. You are downloading notes on Google. You are, then you can see it compromises the quality of education. And so if we are to talk of 21st century industrialization and catching up with the rest of the world, there must be a serious undertaking to pay lecturer, pay part-time, and treat them well.
All right. And Jim, I'll give you an opportunity when we come back. We have to take a break, but just a quick run through of what's in the other papers. This is what's on the front page of the Business Daily. State fully acquires Telkom Kenya in $6.09 billion deal. Telkom's farm becomes parastatal after buyout. On Taifa Leo, Gachagua aendelea kuchoma. Kuchoma nini tutajua. Benki Kuu yakosoa naibu rais kwa kutoa habari za kupotosha katika msururu wa kauli zake za kukanganya. Well, that is very mekanganyika kweli. And finally, in the East African, Ebola, rising cases evokes COVID-19 fears. The EAC has offered to coordinate a uniform response across borders to avoid unnecessary restrictions on movement. That's on page 4 and 5 of the East African newspaper. I think we're going to end it there for now. Let's take now another short, very quick break. We're back. We'll be having a conversation on some of the other issues we've not touched on. Stay with us.
Mivida Garden City, a residential development within Garden City offering stunning 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, unique amenities and an urban green convenient living. Call us today on 0722 123 000. Mivida, my home, my life.
On my dark marks, I've tried everything from A to Z, even vitamin C, but hardly any results. Nivea Lumina 630 works from day one with visible results in just 2 weeks and 71% dark marks reduction in 12. Join the 1 million women already using the #1 Lumina 630 from Nivea.
Sasa pata smartphone mpya Tecno Camon 17 kupitia lipa mdogo mdogo. Weka down payment ya 5,000 alafu malipo ya 80 bob kila siku. Piga *544 *5 hash kuona kama unafaulu kujiunga na mpango wa lipa mdogo mdogo.
Oya, niaje wazee watu wangu wa power, DJ mwapa hivi kama kawaida. You know how we do it kwenye radio yako 96.3 Nation FM, where good music lives. DJ Mo, DJ Kamuzi alongside MC Jawochi, the host with the most. I'll see you.
DJ Kamuzi, the musical chef.
She wants to be like.
Kutoka radio mtu wangu tunaingia kwenye TV na pale hivyo tunaletea ngoma zingine Untitled, tunaletea mpaka guests all over the world kutoka Jamaica, Kenya, East Africa, name them. Ama ni aje Mo?
Yes I, na kama kawaida sisi kama Jam Down tuingia kwenye area kwenye mtaa yako mazee. Jam Down on the road mazee, tuambie ukuje wapi?
Jawochi kila sato anakuletea reggae news, what's trending.
Yeah, this and much more from 7 p.m. Nation FM.
Alafu kuanzia 10 mpaka maidha mtu wangu #JamDownKE. Awola.
I mean, there's no reason Nicole should even be close to him, right?
You are completely right. That man, who is an actual stranger, has become very important to my daughter.
Oh, Mrs. Marissa, Sir Marcelo, I'm sorry, but Nicole doesn't want to come down.
What do you mean? Tell her that her dad is here, that he brought her a gift and to come down now.
No, listen, don't bother, just give it to her.
No, Brian, I was thinking of something that is so much more interesting. Maybe the two of us can have a closed door session.
It had to be you.
New Sensodyne Repair and Protect with Deep Repair. It's a huge game changer for me. The science is pretty amazing because it really goes deep inside the tooth and repairs tooth sensitivity. It's going to improve the quality of my life in a big way.
Retirement Benefits Authority will be in Nakuru at the Huduma Center from Monday 3rd to 7th October. Our officers will be on the ground to answer questions you have on saving for retirement, registering and licensing of schemes, member education, and retirement planning and financial literacy.
Thank you for staying with us. You're watching M Live. Now, the visit of President William Ruto to Homa Bay has raised questions about why he appears to be still campaigning. Political pundits argue that the president made a campaign-style statement on several issues during the stopover in Homa Bay County. Well, is it fitting for the president to make more roadside declarations? Sydney Chazima sought answers, filed this report.
The 2022 campaign period was characterized by heavily charged crowds, promise-laden speeches, and roadside announcements. However, President Ruto's remarks at Homa Bay ignited a debate over whether he was still campaigning. Speaking to NTV, Homa Bay Town MP Peter Kaluma, who criticized the president for not informing him of the visit, stated, quote, "The president should not be formulating policies on top of cars, while the cabinet he recently appointed is yet to assume office." End of quote. However, Ugenya MP David Ochieng, who accompanied the president to Homa Bay, disagrees.
Ruto is not even 1 month into office. This is his second week since he was sworn in. And so anybody who thinks that he's campaigning, for me, I think is not thinking straight. I think they are trying to create a case where there's none.
When a president comes to your home, you must receive him and welcome him. For the sake of the presidency, we must know that the presidency is a symbol of national unity.
Our President William Ruto ako kwa campaign. Na viongozi wetu wa Homa Bay bado wanafikiria ku campaign. Na si kwanza kwamba campaign imeisha, wafanye kazi na president, watulete maendeleo. Jambo lenye walifanya jana haikutufurahisha kabisa, haikutufurahisha at all.
Normally, majority of Kenyans, when they see a leader, when they see a national leader, they've got a very valid expectation that the national leader is going to address them. And it becomes very complicated for three facts. The first fact is that he did not get a sufficient number of votes from Homa Bay. So essentially, he's in a territory whereby the audience he was addressing, in good part, voted for Mr. Raila Odinga. So he has to meet and manage the expectations.
In part, his speech touched on the upcoming review of the competency-based curriculum.
Mimi nasikia nyinyi mnafanya homework mpaka saa 8 ya usiku. So
tutapunguza mambo ya homework ya wazazi.
Ruto appearing to be presumptuous of what the 49-member CBC committee will scrap off.
Kenyans would be extremely worried if he set up, say, a tasker team on a particular position, if he makes an announcement which would compromise the outputs from that task force.
Ruto and his deputy Rigathi Gachagua have recently been accused of adopting cabinet-level responsibilities and putting some of their campaign promises into action. Still, analysts believe the demands of the common mwananchi will prevail.
Mura, Sadia, and Wanjiro have no luxury of time. For them, they want the president to start driving his agenda immediately. Because if you're suffering from food insecurity, you're suffering from housing insecurity, you're suffering from school fees insecurity, you have no luxury of time. You cannot say that, Mr. President, do not make any policy announcements till the cabinet has been formed in total.
In 2020, lawmakers extended the number of vetting days for cabinet secretaries from 14 to 28. The implementation of the plan, as Ruto's manifesto was titled after its unveiling, has now been deferred, putting the president and his deputy in charge for the next month or so.
As to whether, you know, some people, I don't know, as to whether Ruto will run for president in 2027, no one knows. Who knows who will want to run 2027?
Sydney Chazima, NTV.
I thank Sydney for that. I'll begin with you, Jim. So that's the report there. Some have seen this as an aggressive strategy by the president to sort of widen his influence outside his traditional bases. But what we saw was what happened in Homa Bay was quite interesting. So the governor wasn't there. The Homa Bay town member of parliament as well skipped the event when the president is arriving in your own, backyard. Some of the residents also calling out, the leaders for skipping on that particular visit. But basically, what do you see from, the president's visit to that part, the Nyanza-Luo region, Luo-Nyanza region in particular now, and, aggressively, making sure that they sort of feel like he's, they're part of his government, I believe.
This is the real building bridges. This is the real building bridges on the ground, not just on paper. It is saying that the president, he's the president of the Republic of Kenya. And there might be a part of this country that did not vote for him, as is their right. However, when he took oath of office, he became the president for all. And so he is reaching out directly to Kenyans. I think this is in line with the philosophy of the president. It is the bottom up.
But some have argued this is a 2027 strategy as well.
But you see, everything in this country is political. We have to politicize everything. We have to politicize a president going to church to just pray. And then after praying, deciding to greet the faithfuls who came to pray alongside the president. There is absolutely nothing that stops the president from going to any particular part of this country. One, to pray, as he did go to pray. But also, number two, when you're stopped by other citizens and reaching directly to the masses. Because, as I said, it's in tandem with his philosophy that he's reaching directly to, the bottom up. The leaders might want to, but the leaders are at the top, and they did not want to come. But you can sense from the sentiments of the residents that they resonate to the things that he's saying. They see that, well, we had a fight, we lost, but you're now our president, and you've come to our region. We still hold you accountable, and we have to ask you questions. The things that I take a bit of issue with is his remarks, as have been said. For instance, when he starts saying, nitangalia barabara ya kutoka wapi hadi wapi, he goes back to the deputy president that we remember, who used to know all roads and corners in this country. When he says that, it now essentially removes him, and he starts becoming the prefect, who now starts to say, when he goes to the cabinet, he will start telling the Minister of Roads, there's a road somewhere in Homa Bay, please go and look at that. You, as a president, you have to slightly rise above that, slightly rise above it, and allow your CSS to now become your mtu wa mkono. We know he's a hands-on guy, but he now has to allow his CSS and other people to be his mtu wa mkono. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with the president going, greeting Kenyans, as he was doing. When Kenyans stopped him, he's the president, what is he supposed to do? But number two, we should actually laud this move, that it is in reaching out. We saw Rigathi Gachagua reaching out to Raila the other day, and everyone saying this is part of healing the nation. We are seeing the president himself going to Homa Bay County and reaching out to the masses. It is part of healing the nation. It is part of saying, let us come together. The election is behind us. Let us forge ahead. If in 2027, it so happens that he did such a good job that the residents of Homa Bay decide to vote for him, where is the problem? They're voting based on performance.
When the president, sort of extended that olive branch, to Azimio leader Raila Odinga, and also saying that he's going to take care of him and the former president Uhuru Kenyatta, is this sort of, a symbolic remark to ask the former prime minister to retire from politics?
It is also, you see, part of good public speakers know their audience. Okay. If you're a good public speaker, you know your audience. And when you know your audience, you know the things that they want to hear. You know what you should be telling them. And he's in right. As Ricky G told us, Raila is a senior citizen who must be taken care of, as is prescribed in law. But other than that, he's also a statesman. And these people voted for him. So he has to take care of him, ensure that he's protected. We already seen the president, the former president, has a job. We have seen Raila Odinga is also taking up his job as the leader of opposition. And so as the leader of opposition, he must be protected. He must be taken care of. And so personally, I think we want to read a lot, and we want to read a lot of malice in politics in a beautiful story. In a story where we are actually supposed to embrace and say, this is a good move. This is good for country.
But at the end of it all, it's a political move. Let's hear from husband.
Yeah, I think I agree with my friend. The president can visit any part of this country. And secondly, it is not the visits that he makes that will endear him to the people come 2027. That is far from it. He can build kingpins, he can do all the trips to Luo Nyanza. That won't get him votes. What will get him votes? And I think this is something that most politicians who are looking at 2027 need to look at. If the president delivers on even just 30% of what he promised Kenyans, I think 2027 will be smooth sailing for him. So he doesn't have to visit if he delivers. If the hustlers in Homa Bay, in Migori County, in Nyeri, in Isiolo, in Wajir are comfortable, they realize that by the time Dr. William Ruto became the president, their household GDP was, let me say, 3,000. And he's living, and their household GDP is 9,000, they will have no reason to think of any other person. That is how a functional democracy works. And we are looking at a situation where it is the guys at the bottom of the pyramid, the hustlers, so to speak, who enthroned, the president into this leadership. They voted across board, He managed to get votes even in areas that he had never gotten votes. But you see, if you look at this visit, there are a number of issues that come to the fore. One is the statements that he made that border on policy statements, especially the one on CBC. It defeats logic to start, talking about a curriculum for which you've set a task force to interrogate and come up with a framework. So you are offering directions on the pathway that they need to take. If there is something I celebrate in CBC is the fact that it has brought parents home. So that midnight homework is not really midnight homework. It's simply parents are spending more time with their kids. But it has so many other challenges. I am in the education sector. I am a teacher, but I'm not a curriculum expert. So we better leave that to curriculum experts to deal with it, because CBC is not just a question of coming up with solutions. It's a question of the future of the next generation of Kenyans. Then number two, if the president goes to Homa Bay and says, I know the road from Karungu to Sori, we will build that road, it's a good thing. You can't force leaders from Homa Bay to join the president, because he didn't go there as the head of state. He went as the president. He decided that...
But the president is the head of state.
He decided as the president on Sunday, I'll go and fellowship in Homa Bay. Right. It is totally different. If he had taken Jamhuri Day celebrations in Homa Bay, and then the Homa Bay town MP doesn't show up, the governor doesn't show up, would have a problem with that.
So it's unfair to castigate these leaders for not attending.
Why are you castigating leaders? If the president decides that today he's going to worship in Surgoi, Will all leaders in Uasin go to Surgoi because the president is... It's not a state function. Attending church is not a state function. It has nothing to do with Homa Bay County. But if he made statements, that is where leaders come in. He made statements and commitment. You know, I am a true deistarian, and one of the key things we learned is that communication when made in public increases commitment. So for the people of Homa Bay, and I come from South Nyanza, we are very happy that he made a pronouncement in public, which increases commitment. If those roads are built, it would mean that, you know, moving within Homa Bay and Migori would become very easy. And I expect even the leaders who didn't show up now to take the president on that and tell the president, you went to pray, but you also saw the plight of our people and you made a commitment. How then do we work around these commitments? I think that is where we need to hold the president. But I would also say, you know, this country is very big. We've had celebrations of national events in what I would call the center counties. If the president has started this journey of reaching out to other counties, we need to see the same done with public holidays. We need to see celebrations go to places that they've never gone. I would actually welcome the president to take the next national celebration to my home county of Migori because they voted for him more than any other Luo Nyanza county. But ultimately, I think the most critical thing about building bridges and what my colleague has talked about is not reaching out to the people. That is not it. Because, you know, the structure of our politics and how we mobilize, it's a multi-layered, two-step, three-step kind of, you know, political mobilization. And the African traditional heritage also respects opinion leaders, you know. So to just pop into Homa Bay, I'm not so sure that it was in the public domain that he was going to Homa Bay. Not to prepare leaders so that it is clear that these leaders knew you were coming and they decided to, you know, take a walk. Probably is not the best way to look at it, that if you want to build bridges, there is a way in which you can build bridges through, you know, respected leaders. Because whether they were elected on Azimio or Kenya Kwanza, they have a following. You cannot disenfranchise, you know, leaders and reach out to the people. Because the conversations going around right now from Homa Bay, people are asking if there are churches in this country, why did he decide to pray in Homa Bay? Okay. There are guys who are saying, this guy just came to laugh at us, that now I'm the president, I'm coming with the trappings of power to show you what you didn't get, you know. So if you want to reach out, if you want to build this nation, you know, the hustler mentality was a campaign thing, yeah? So there is no reason why we should continue with, I'm reaching directly to the hustlers. Right. There could be a structured way, a more respectful way of engaging leaders, reaching out to the public through, you know, opinion leaders. Okay, so I know, Dr. Ojwang, you're with the president in Homa Bay. Yeah. Like I said, that's your hometown. Yeah. And okay, so I want to hear, let's hear from you as well. So what do you make of that particular visit and the lack thereof of the leaders that were present there?
Yeah, there's a word called idiosyncrasy that we say, who will buy rotten bananas if fools are not allowed to attend a market? The Homa Bay leaders and Homa Bay people are unanimous on this, did not disrespect the president, but the people. Because you will not make president less president by not showing up when he comes to your home. He did not even invite them to State House. He said, I will come to where you are comfortable. I will reach you at your place and on your terms. So it is contempt to us, the people of Homa Bay. And, but there were leaders. You know, we come from Homa Bay. We are not foster children of Homa Bay. We have run in Homa Bay. We are also from there. And I saw people of Homa Bay and Luoland really saying ahead of their politicians. They were seeking visa. There's this common word where before you leave, men are said to be given visa. So they were looking for visa from whoever their leader is, who maybe had not given them the visa to attend. But it was pathetic, unnecessary, because that week my governor had approached international organizations seeking water for Homa Bay. A very good progress. At most, they give 30 million. The president came with a 4 billion plan. You are not there. And so it is one thing that we don't miss our words. I've been chatting with them. I've been asking them what happened. I spoke to Honorable Pondo Kalumba, but I'll be gracious because he lost his father last night. So I will have been more mean. He's the MP for Homa Bay, but he's mourning. And therefore I respect that, and so I will not go beyond that. But the president knows Homa Bay. The people of Homa Bay, some of us voted for him. I decided not to vote in Nairobi, but in Rangwe, and the ink have not dried. So we voted, a few that voted, but that is not even the point. Because at this point, the president said that the handshake will not be done by few individuals. It is about service. And that is a new politics that probably become novel, that people who are used to, if you come, you know, gang kind of politics, if you come to my neighborhood, that's what happened in gangs, you must first check by me. And as our gang leader authorized you, if not, we are mean to you. There are some markets here in Nairobi that you cannot enter until you have spoken to this right person. That is politics of the past. Look at what he said. And you see, the word roadside does not mean it has been said on the road. I think Honorable Kaluma took that word literally, of course. So roadside means that there is no policy around it. But if you have made policy, for example, he talked of the cotton, and there was already a policy, and he said tomorrow the cabinet is going to approve GMO so that there is cotton in this region that can sustain you. Then just because it is also spoken on the road where people are, does not make it roadside. I don't think that was the literal sense of roadside. It meant there is no policy around it. If he come and say, and he named them very well, I was so embarrassed, because when he was startling around one, I tried to distract and shout a name, and he told me, no, not that one. It's like, my goodness. So he knows them by name. Because I was trying to stretch him to where he wasn't. These were roads that were ongoing, and that he is saying should be completed. It is the people who shouted CBC. It is the people actually who shouted CBC. And he said, yeah, there is a task force that will review it. And we have had complaints, for example, that it is taking too long. I don't think that the curriculum should be what helped me spend time with my children. And that time is not quality to me if it is us going around seeking feathers and whatever the assignment is. Because at home, we have spiritual duties to undertake with children. We have social duties. I want to give them the history of the Luo nation. But if it is about this mundane assignment that now we are running helter-skelter, that now finally we are spending time with the children, I think they have missed it by a mile. So we were very excited. Of course, it has been a lot of lobbying to know that Homa Bay is the first county in Nyanza that the president have stepped on. And one of the few, in fact, I think the most places he has gone is Central Kenya. And he said, shockingly, he had signed a charter. So for those who think we are shooting from the hip, he had signed a charter, and I signed on behalf of Homa Bay County how fish can industrialize that place. We don't need to be in Nairobi. We should be teaching blue ocean and fish laws in Homa Bay. So there is a charter that Homa Bay people signed with Kenya Kwanza, and he said he will implement it. It can be shared with whoever wants to see it. We signed what is the bottom up of our pineapple, what is the bottom up of this sweet potato, that when I walk in Githurai, I ask somebody, wow, beautiful, he tells me this is from Kavondo. And in Kavondo, they have picked it at 10 shillings, but they are selling them at 200. So what is the bottom up of that? If there is a time that Homa Bay people have been excited, when we went with the Excellency in the middle of the campaign, it shocked me because for the first time he apologized and said that the previous government might not have been very true to developing this region. What we don't want is, let us do politics, let us do oversight, but let the government not envision a region as an enemy, because you don't empower your enemy. You don't want to put money in the pocket of your enemy. And the president is saying there is no reason even for not voting for me will become my enemy. That is them exercising their constitutional right. Now, a lot of things that I've seen in social media, you know, it looks like the leaders are being braggy and bragging, but fear sometimes come out as arrogance. I think they are afraid. I don't know why, but they need to be reassured that leaders, there is no reason of being afraid, that this government will serve you right like any other Kenyans, that you are in the plan. Some of the things we are talking about and I've seen appear that we are arrogant people, but I think they are born out of fear. We should not be afraid of this government because from the heart of the president and the government, they are very particular in industrializing Luoland. That is the plan of decongesting Nairobi. That is the plan of empowering everybody. That is the plan of, and so the silly arguments, for example, saying, why a church in Homa Bay? I don't think, I think we might as well go to Jivanji Garden and debate that, but not in an NTV station. Because those are Jivanji, no disrespect to Jivanji group debating right now, but those are Jivanji kind of arguments. Why not? The question is why not? Why not Homa Bay? Why not AIC in Homa Bay? Why not address people in Homa Bay when they are standing there? And by the way, it is so interesting because the leaders have communicated, the members, the citizens have communicated to the leaders that you are not disrespecting the president. You are disrespecting us because you earn your salary.
Okay.
You don't want development coming our way, and you are trying to sabotage that. I saw one saying he should have been given a plane. I saw another one saying they are not nini because guess the fear. Our county have not been helping us, and that is why they are afraid.
All right.
Our counties have not helped us. They have remained cash cow for some parties, but this time I'm glad that Homa Bay and Luoland is in the heart of this government.
Okay, so we're winding up. I'll give you Hesbon and then Jim, very quick remarks.
Yeah, I think I like what Prof is saying. Yeah, there is 4 billion for water in Homa Bay.
Right.
There is a lot of, grand plans to industrialize Luo Nyanza. And for me, I think it's not important to make these things, lip service, say them in public. I would want to see what I see in other countries, that to what extent do we go to Kabondo and ensure that the sweet potato that is grown in Kabondo benefits the farmers in Kabondo and changes their lives. In 2018, I was privileged enough to have boarded a plane under the auspices of the Communist Party of China to just go and see how China managed to get people out of poverty, in a span of 30 years. And there is no poor person in China. I know in areas where they grow rice, they value add so much so that there is even wine from rice. So if the president goes to Kano Plains, if the president goes to Mwea in Kirinyaga, how do we start looking at that rice in terms of how can the farmers reap as much as they can from this rice? From the byproducts, from the rice itself, from what can be, We live in a country where at some point milk is very expensive, and at some point farmers are actually pouring that milk away because the cost of storage now is too much. How do we scale that up? And I still insist on Kabondo because I know the sweet potato in Kabondo is like the sweet potato in Zhejiang County in China. But the farmers in China have invested heavily and they're exporting byproducts. They are feeding people in China, and it has grown that city. There's a city called Jino in China. It has grown that city. That is what I need to see in Oyugi's town. And I think if I see that, with or without the president going for church service, for Harambes there, in 2027, I will be the first one on the queue in Suna East, Nikendo Primary, voting for him. And that is if I see the mining industry in Migori, for instance, transformed. There's a lot that we do in Migori, and the biggest is sugarcane farming and tobacco farming.
All right.
But I've grown up knowing that people who farm tobacco are perpetually in poverty. I mean, these guys can't educate their kids beyond class 7. Guys who are doing sugarcane farming right now are suffering. How do we see a difference in that? And the moment we see a difference in that, it doesn't matter whether my leaders will come when the president is bringing Mashujaa Day in Migori.
All right.
I will vote for the president if that is delivered.
All right. Jim, you have the final word here.
I mean, I'm in total agreement with what they're saying,
Right.
but these are conversations that we need our leaders to be present. These policies and the economic generation of our different counties across the country will not happen if our leaders still take the politics of us against them. Kenyans have gotten to an age and we have demonstrated that we go, we vote, results come out, we go to work the next day. And once we go to work the next day, we want to fix the economy. And so our leaders cannot remain. Kenyans are moving. So any leader who's still in the past needs to catch up with the rest of us. And they need to catch up fast enough so that we build this country. If at all, for instance, we're going to regenerate the economy of any county, the leaders must be present. What policies need to be put in place at the county level? What needs to be put in place at the national level? Who needs to table those particular policies at that level?
Right.
So our people refuse to remain in poverty, and some of our leaders seem to be hell-bent on keeping us poor. Right. So they must step up, catch up with the rest of us, and get to work.
Okay, Jim India, political and governance analyst, Dr. Duncan Ojwang, human rights lawyer, Dean, School of Law, Nazarene University, as well as Hesbon Owila, media and political communications expert. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming this morning to have this conversation. What will be very interesting to see how the next couple of days will be panning out, and then also Parliament. We will be trading our eyes on Parliament today as they make, those very interesting and very pertinent decisions, which actually falls on the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula. All right, so that's it from us on M Live. Thank you for watching. Your World is coming up shortly with Winnie Lubembe. Don't go away. Have yourself a good morning and good day. My name is Zainab Ismail.